conversation tonight, and I'm looking forward to speaking with all of you. Yes, I am Molly Kelly, and I am running for Governor of New Hampshire because I believe that, and deeply, deeply concerned that our state is going in the wrong direction under Governor Sununu. I also am really very concerned that even when the governor is in the state, which hasn't been a lot lately, he is really bringing forth implementing many of the Trump policies from DC, and that has to change. It is wrong. He is also spending a lot of time being very concerned about special interests and bringing campaign funding into his campaign, corporate funding into his campaign, and that is wrong. So what I want to do, and what I believe all of you want, is you want to be here for the best interest of our children and for our families. What New Hampshire wants New Hampshire that provides opportunity for everyone, not just a few. It's a value that I had and learned long ago, and that's because I'm number 2 of 11 children. So if you picture us around the dinner table at night, 13 of us, it was not about just me. It was about everyone. And we learned early on that if one of us was to succeed, we all must succeed. And that's a value that I will take with me as governor in the governor's seat. Because if one of us in New Hampshire is to thrive, we must all thrive. I also hear, and I believe with the people of New Hampshire, and I hear them every day, that we all want an opportunity for an education and skilled training, not just a few. Education is important to me. It's personal to me. Today, I have a wonderful husband who is here with us tonight, Art Liptowski, and who has joined us. But there was a time in my life where I was a single mom. I had 3 little children. They were just 3, 6, and 7. And I went back to college at Keene State because I believed that I needed to complete my education if I was going to move forward and to be able to provide for my family and to open doors for my children. I worked hard, like so many of you and everyone in New Hampshire. I managed the apartment complexes at Keene State. I cleaned those laundry rooms. I had a waitress job at Papagino's one night a week, and I even had a rural paper route Saturday mornings in Peterborough, New Hampshire. I was willing to do whatever it takes, like all of you, to move us forward, and we know that. I did go on and I completed a law degree with my children at Franklin Pierce Law Center. And I want to make sure that we all have the opportunity to move forward in our life, either with education, skilled training, job training, apprenticeships, whatever it takes for us to be able to take care of our families, each other, and our communities. And that's why I'm running for Governor of New Hampshire. Believe me, when I was cleaning those laundry rooms, I never imagined that I would have the honor to serve in the state Senate. But I have, and it has been an honor. I served for 10 years in the state Senate, from 2006 to 2016. And I'm proud of my record in the Senate. I stand strong with my record. I have always been there and stood up for public education and support education. And I would veto any voucher bill that came my way that weakened public education. I want to strengthen public education and lower our property taxes. The women in New Hampshire know that I have been a champion in the Senate, before the Senate, and in my entire life for women's rights, women's reproductive rights, and I have stood with Planned Parenthood and will continue to stand with Planned Parenthood every single day. I had the honor to vote and be one of the first senators to vote for the Marriage Equality Act in this state almost 10 years ago. And also, I was there and stood up for common sense gun safety when it wasn't popular to talk about or people weren't being harmed. I also put forth the first group net metering bill in the state for renewable energy that has propelled hydro and solar in the state, and I'm proud of that. And I will stand with working families every day because that's who we are, that's who I am, and that's what I want to do. So I will continue to talk about my record because I'm proud of my record. Being progressive and being bold is not new to me. I have been fighting for these issues every single day of my life, and I want to continue to fight with them and stand with you, and we can do that together. Thank you.
Okay, if you'd like to ask a question, please raise your hand. I'm going to take several names down. What's your name? Judith?
Jude Fabre.
Okay, Milt Lowenson. And let's see. Okay, what's your name?
Stephanie.
Stephanie? Okay, first question, Dick Snow.
It is my personal opinion.
I'm going to ask you if you, when you're making your question, please stand up and speak loudly.
I think they'll hear me without this, but I'm perfectly. It is my personal opinion that it is time for the governments of this country to make the market on recyclable energy. What is your response to that?
Either of you can go.
Well, and what is your first name again? Your first name again?
Dick Snow.
Dick, okay. Dick, thank you for that question, because renewable energy is very important to me, and we're talking about recyclable energy as well. As I said earlier, that I was the senator in 2013 that put forth the first renewable energy bill for group net metering that propelled hydro and solar in the state, and I'm with you, and we need to expand it. We need to wean ourselves from fossil fuel and expand renewable energy. Just this week, I was out talking with many towns, municipalities who were dependent on the bill to move renewable energy forward and to expand the cap for renewable energy. Just the things that you're talking about and we're all talking about. And Governor Sununu vetoed that bill. And in doing so, he really threw a wet blanket on the future for us here in New Hampshire on renewable energy. Like you, I agree. We need clean air, clean water. People expect that. We're going to do that, and we're going to expand renewable energy in this state. We must do it. It brings jobs, lowers energy costs, and I'm with you. Let's go forward to push renewable energy and to expand it. I have. It's not something I've talked about. It's something I have been doing for a very long time. Thank you.
Dick, so earlier this week, put out a specific plan that reflects where I think the future of energy and the economy is going. I spent a lot of time looking at what other states do. And the bill that Molly's referring to has had a small impact in the 5 years since it's come in. Only about 1/2 or 1% of New Hampshire's electricity comes from solar. And so while it's a modest and well-intended beginning, when we look at the states that are leaping forward on it, and I asked them what to do, what we need to do is dramatically increase demand for renewables. And the way to do that is to dramatically increase in two places. One is we need to dramatically increase the renewable portfolio standard. It should be 50% by 2030. That is what I'm proposing. Vermont, Maine, Massachusetts, and a number of other states are very aggressively moving that way. That dramatically increases the demand because people see that the economy will be there to embrace that. The second is that we should do much more than even do what Chris won't do, Chris Sununu. Chris won't go from 1 to 5 for the cap. We should eliminate the cap altogether. The states that have done that have found dramatic increases. So Vermont, for example, is already at 10% solar, moving quickly. Massachusetts, 8%, moving quickly. We're at 1/2 of 1%. So we need to set an aggressive goal that is doable because other states, our neighbors, are doing it across party lines. It is sitting there on a tee if we do it. One other thing that I think is important, I believe in a progressive formula for the match to allow people on the lower end of the wage scale to be able to get in the game on energy efficiency programs. We've taken most of the RGGI money that was intended to go into energy efficiency programs, and we've taken most of it out. It's not part of the program. That has slowed down the point of RGGI in the first place. We should put that back in, and I want a progressive formula, because if you get half of it paid for, but you don't have the money up front to pay, you don't get to participate in the program. So it ends up making the rich richer and the poor poorer unintentionally. We have an opportunity with the progressive match to do something about that. Thank you very much.
I missed that.
Yeah, please let the speaker speak. Sharon?
Okay, this is a three-part question. Part one, we have a challenge in New Hampshire with workforce recruitment. So our college graduates, as soon as they graduate from our colleges here in New Hampshire, they're leaving the state. So they're our greatest export right now. The second issue I would like to hear from you is our affordable housing. And we lack vacancy, very much so. So less than 2% available affordable housing throughout the state. So what are your plans to reconcile that challenge? And the third challenge is we don't have a public transportation infrastructure. So people can't get to jobs if they have jobs. So I'd like to hear how both of you address that.
We're gonna alternate on who answers first. Okay.
Okay. This is a tough one in 2 minutes, eh?
Okay.
All important, lowest birth rate in America, second highest median age in America. You get the idea. This is one of the biggest problems we face. Students leaving the state. So I have a debt-free plan for college. This is definitely not new to me. My family filed bankruptcy when I was in high school and trying to be the first one to graduate high school and go to college. It is not enough for us to freeze tuition, because especially for first-generation college students that are seeking post-secondary education, my problem was $20,000 ago. So I have a plan for debt-free college that if you stay in the state and work for a participating company after, you do it 3 or more years, it's debt-free. It's a strong incentive to keep people in the state. It's fiscally responsible, details on the website. Affordable housing, the #1 reason we do not have a greater diversity of housing stock, more apartments, smaller housing that can keep you in a community for a lifetime, is because we rely more on property taxes than any state in America to pay for education and infrastructure and social services. It is encouraging local governments to zone children out, to zone lower income people out, to zone density out and height out and apartments out. And we see the consequences of that in communities around the state. And so I believe in the long run, there's some good policy that can be done at the regional level. But as a governor, arguably the #1 thing I could do that would move the needle the fastest in a permanent way in all towns is we got to move away from a system that relies almost exclusively on property taxes. When even the reddest states in America, Wyoming, Mississippi, you name it, they would look at the way we do it in New Hampshire as a 19th century solution, and we end up with the problems people predicted would happen 120 years ago with antiquated governance. And that's what we have. As somebody that audits cities for a living, I see this around the country all the time. We can do so much better. Just getting to average would be amazing in this state when it comes to governance, and we could do it. On infrastructure, it's a 5-second answer because that's what I got. Commuter rail, while not as directly applicable to the seacoast, would do a lot to bring young people into the state, work in Boston for a while, eventually settle. If you've got America's best pre-K through 12 public schools, you got great rail, you can expand the shrinking number of young people in New Hampshire.
Yes, and thank you for that question, because I have been working on this issue for 10 years in the Senate, and I agree with you. Workforce recruitment is primary, and we need to address it immediately. I will just tell you a couple things. Governor Sununu gave over $100 million in tax breaks to the 3% of the wealthiest corporations in our state. We need to take that funding, all of us, and we need to address and to invest in public education, job training, and affordable college. Businesses are not, as you said, are not asking us for tax breaks. What they are asking for is an educated and a prepared workforce. They are crying out for that. And we actually, if we invest in education and job training, will be able to give them what they need. Our young people are looking at this state and saying there are no opportunities here in New Hampshire. So there's a total disconnect. And I think that we also need to attract our young people by providing friendly public policy for our young people. First of all, the voter suppression bill that was vetoed is wrong, and it is telling our young students and our college students, because it's targeting them, that we really don't care if you come to New Hampshire. We're not interested in your voice. We do need to make college affordable. We need to expand our college debt repayment program so that students will stay here, become a part of the workforce. We need to pass the Paid Family Medical Leave Act, for sure, expand broadband. Again, our workforce is looking for broadband, like I said, the paid medical family is very important, and also rail. It is finally time to bring rail to New Hampshire. We know that. Everyone is telling us, our young people are telling that, and we can work together for affordable housing. Takes leadership from the governor's office to bring communities together to address some of the zoning issues that we have that are keeping us from providing affordable housing as well. Thank you.
Greg Warner.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My question... Hell no.
Okay, let's get to the point.
The point is simply, how are we going to keep our democracy intact in the face of the Koch brothers' anarchic control of the Republican Party? They have a program to eliminate Republic democracy.
Molly?
Yes, thank you, thank you. You know, I think one of the things you're addressing is campaign finance, and where's the money, and corrupt money in our system for campaigns. First of all, we must overturn Citizens United. That's important. Campaign finance is so important to me that I am the only one in this campaign who has made a commitment and stuck with the commitment and have not taken $1 from corporations in my campaign. So much of the issues you're talking about can have to be dealt with on a federal level, as I said, Citizens United, but in our state here, we can continue to look at reforming our public financing and our campaign financing, and a couple of the ways we can do that is to make sure that we look at the loopholes on the LLC in our own state, and that would help. That would be a big help to working with reforming campaign finance in our state. And we need more transparency. But I agree with you, it is very, very important. And I will just segue to one thing that I think is important, because you mentioned democracy and how important that is. Education has been my priority. When I was in the Senate, it was my priority. It will be as governor. And I will just say that I believe, and I think you agree with me, that the core of democracy is public education. And bills like, or legislation like the voucher bill, erode public education. And if we erode public education, then we erode democracy. So we must make education our priority in this state, because that's what we can do in our communities and the state to move democracy forward and work together on that. Thank you.
It's an important question. There are three elements that I've got. The first two is we should repeal, and I will, the two voter suppression bills, one from 2017, one from 2018, replace it with automatic voter registration. Number two is that we should move from gerrymandering to an independent redistricting commission. Iowa's got a great example. There's a big bill in the legislature. And the third is public finance. So let's spend a moment on that. First, I'm the only candidate, certainly in this race, and I suspect in a generation, who believes that the only way you're going to get public campaign finance reform is with the public funding of elections. It's what works in other states. It's the only way to get the big four things fundamentally out of politics. Big money from individuals, corporations, PACs, out-of-state money. That's the only way you're going to do it. My plan basically says if 90% or more of your money is raised in state in increments of $100 or less, you're eligible for a significant public match for state senate, executive council, and gubernatorial races. This is what works in places like Connecticut, where 82% of candidates in the last cycle with a plan similar to this, almost equally across party lines, used it. It dramatically changes the game on how you raise money, and it will cost less than 0.1% of the operating budget to dramatically improve how we elect the people that spend the other 99.9% of the operating budget. I will say there's no corporate money in my campaign either. My plan, when I put it out with public funding, Molly in her campaign said, she criticized me harder than Chris Sununu, and said that taxpayers shouldn't pay for politicians' campaigns, to which I say, who the heck do you think is paying for those campaigns right now? We need to be upfront about it. And I would say that against Chris Sununu, this has the potential of being a powerful argument where we are on the right side. But I'm the only candidate that's never taken a dime from PSNH or Eversource. Molly's taken thousands of dollars from them. Chris has taken thousands of dollars from it. It has affected the way he works on Northern Pass and so many other issues. We have a chance to hit that underbelly of Chris Sununu if I'm the nominee.
I just want to respond to that because I feel that there was incorrect information there. First of all, just be clear, I am the only one in this campaign, and we're calling this the governor's race, that has not taken any corporate dollars. If my opponent has not, then I think that you need to be fair and transparent with your finance records, and that would be helpful. So I just want to make that clear that I have been the only one who has not. In 2013, when I was in the Senate, I had received a check from PSNH, and let me tell you what happened. I put through a group net metering bill that they fought every single day. It made absolutely no difference to me. So I am talking about this race, this governor's race, and I was the first one to say no. And I will say that Steve is correct, and it is very, very disappointing that our governor has taken over $50,000 in contributions from Eversource. Thank you.
Steve, you get to go, and then we're going to move on to the next question.
Well, first, there are a number of contributions involving PSNH, including the employee PAC. The second thing is there was a key vote on Northern Pass also in 2013. I spent a lot of time. My aunt's a retired dairy farmer in Pittsburgh. My grandpa lived in West Stewartstown. My aunt and my cousins are in Colebrook and in Pittsburgh. I've been against Northern Pass since day one when it was going to go through my family's yard. And it concerned them greatly, and there was a key vote in 2013. And there were some Republicans and some Democrats that voted the right way on it and some that voted the wrong way. I believe Molly voted the wrong way on it, and that the folks in the North Country are aware of it. Northern Pass is a personal thing to me, and on energy policy. It is very important that if we're going to get away from giant hydro and 64% of our electricity coming from natural gas, we need to push with great vigor and clarity as it relates to renewables and conservation. And I think that Chris Sununu is so right for this conversation if we have the ability, due to our record. If we're going to talk about the record, we got to do that, and it gives us an opportunity to really take it to Chris Sununu in November.
Are you for or against the Granite Bridge project pipeline, and do you accept any money from companies associated with fossil fuels?
I am the only candidate that, at least as of this moment, who is flat out against Granite Bridge. 64%, I believe, of New England's electricity comes from natural gas. That number has been going up. It is nasty. The fracking process is nasty for the environment, and it makes us less safe. Because as we increase the percentage of our electricity, our energy, that comes from any one source, in this case natural gas, it in a volatile international market, which is where natural gas is getting traded now, it exposes us to risk as ratepayers. But on the environmental front, we don't have to go there. So Granite Bridge would move us. It's like building a bridge that we've already crossed. And I think that if we go with a plan, and I've tried to be really specific this week about it, other states have done it, they're doing it well. This renewable portfolio standard that obviously natural gas is not part of that, getting that to 50% by 2030, it presents an opportunity for us to lead, to create thousands of really great jobs in the state. It's a pro-entrepreneur bill, pro-solar, offshore wind, biomass, and so forth. But I think Granite Bridge has nothing to do with that, and no, I have not taken any money, and they clearly will not be giving me any going forward either.
Thank you. I just want to make it very clear, I have never supported Northern Pass. Let's just make that clear. I also did not support the Kinder Morgan pipeline that was in the southern part of our state. And I have not taken any corporate dollars from any fossil fuel companies or executives. So I do want to talk about the bridge project because it's very important. As I said earlier, and make very clear, that we must wean ourselves from fossil fuels. There is no question about that. And I have been a leader in this state for solar energy. However, one thing I did learn for 10 years in the state Senate is that in order to make a responsible decision and the right decision, you have to take all information into account, because if you don't, there could be unintended consequences that we would have to deal with later. So as most of you know, because I've talked to you already, I have been meeting with people all over, experts in energy, the communities, and looking and reading all about this pipeline. And there are reports coming out that we haven't seen yet. But let me just tell you the bottom line. The bottom line is I will not support a project that does not lower our carbon footprint, and I will not support a project that is not safe for our communities. Thank you.
All right, Milt Lauenstein. I want to encourage everybody, when you're asking the question, speak loudly and clearly. Milt?
Both of you are progressive and for the people, and you'll both be great. But I'd like you to speak a little bit about your ability to implement the laws that are enacted.
Okay, so Molly, you go first.
Thank you for that question. Yes, well, I feel like I've had experience with that. I've had experience in 10 years in the Senate, and working to work across party lines to actually pass legislation that is bipartisan, which then makes it much easier to implement. And laws are laws, so once we have a law, you have to abide by that. So I believe that my experience is not just talking about the issues that I think are important or talking about what I think might be a good idea, but I've actually made bills happen and pass into law, whether it was the renewable energy, whether it has benefit corporations, whether it was safety schools, whether it was gun safety, whatever they were, those were the things that I was able to do, work together against party line, with party lines, sometimes against, with, and to make sure that we get laws passed. And as governor, I think that it's very important that you have had that experience to work with legislators, you understand the process, and that you are ready day one to sit in that seat and to move forward. So yes, we can't just talk about issues, we need to implement them, and we need to get them down to the communities so that we can make sure that we're working in the best interest of all the people in this state.
Well, this is definitely not new to me. Many years before even Molly was in the state Senate, and wearing a number of hats. First, as someone who audits cities for a living, it was my job to go in, to identify what the problems were, and to propose and help implement practical solutions across the spectrum, from law enforcement to education, the juvenile justice system of the state of Virginia, and everything in between. It's a challenge. It was diverse. It was amazingly educational, and that was starting back in the 90s. Then I was a city councilor and a mayor. And I definitely was willing to lead from the front as a local elected official. Again, most of this even before Molly was in the state Senate. For example, we had the first LEED certified public building in the state of New Hampshire back in 2005 and 6 during the construction process, our new library. There were a lot of people trying to plow over the last 35 acres of contiguous forest land left in Portsmouth off of Jones Avenue. And myself and a handful of really other good people like Eric Spear and Chris Dwyer worked together to keep it downtown. People wanted to put a middle school out there. They wanted to move the library out there. I had to work with the Taxpayers Association, who did not agree with me on any spending. And they knew I was a Democrat, and they did not like me. And I sat down with them and said, if I told you a LEED certified building would pay for itself in about 7.5 years, and I showed them the numbers, and I was wrong. It took 3.5 years because we had the spike in energy prices around that time. It is difficult when you are a local elected official because you make difficult decisions every day. Everybody recognizes who you are. Then you go to Hannaford's, and then you got cleanup in aisle 6. And that cleanup was me, because it would take me an hour to get home because you have to deal with people. It's not just Republican, Democrat. It's hate you, love you. It's people that own property and don't. It's people that have kids and don't. It is the nastiest, most difficult experience is to be a mayor or a city councilor or a school board member. It is God's work. In all of the work I've done since then as director of corporate at UNH and across the spectrum, it has been a wonderful set of experiences that I believe put me in a great position to be able to work across party lines if necessary. And I hope I don't get criticized anymore whenever I do that. But sometimes you got to find the majority within your party. I want a majority so we can do that in 2019.
So what does that word progressive mean? For me, the word progressive means somebody that's willing to take on the establishment, push us way past where we are right now, to be bold and have vision. New Hampshire has a lot of climate impacts already. We have fewer maple trees, the maple syrup is of lesser quality. We're losing moose, bear, loons, shrimp, cod, lobster, you name it. This state is facing a problem with snow. We have our in our top 3 industries.
You have a question?
What's the question?
Yeah, I want to know where you stand on climate, what you're going to do that's different from what Republicans are doing, because we have Republicans now that are pushing the solar cap. So if you don't oppose the Granite Bridge pipeline, I want to know why. If you do, I'd like to know if you support offshore wind. And also, I'd like to know what it is you're really going to do and what that fear is that you have about there being something that we need that pipeline for.
Okay, so Steve.
All right, I'm catching up. Sorry, I think I got it. Okay. Just to reiterate, I support offshore wind. Chris Sununu has been uniquely stubborn in authorizing the federal government to allow the process to begin. Offshore wind is part of the mix, and again, part of why I vigorously support a 50% RPS standard by 2030 is that it's part of the impetus that allows renewables to get in the game. It changes the market in a way that I think makes the economy of it much more attractive. And again, we have experiences of other states that are doing it successfully around us in our midst. I've already expressed my opposition, and I think the explanation for the opposition to Granite Bridge pipeline. And what else did you ask?
I just asked if you opposed it, did you support offshore wind? And if you don't oppose it, you said you had concerns about that. And what might those concerns be? Because there are a lot of concerns with the pipeline. There's a 2.2% leakage rate and a safety record that's not very good with Liberty Utilities.
Are you done, Steve?
I think I got it.
Oh,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
thank you. A couple issues. You mentioned climate change. I believe in climate change is real. We have a governor who said climate change is not real. So I think that what policies we move forward on our energy have to be based on fact and on science. And I believe that that's necessary because it is real. I also want to just tell you that my values and all of the work that I've done forever have not changed. Those are core values that I have, and I continue to make decisions based on those core values, okay? So when you do mention issues like the bridge project, you know, one of my values is to really look deep into issues and to be responsible when I make a decision. Now, it's not a fear, it's just wanting information and to make sure that we're doing the right thing. I think that, you know, there's a balancing act. We need to move forward with renewable energy. I'm the first to tell you that, and I have pushed it forward the whole time I've been in the Senate, and it will be a priority when I'm governor as well. But we can't just stop everything because we're not ready. But we have to make it a priority.
Yes, we are ready.
Excuse me.
And so in the meantime, we have to look at how we can balance that to get to where we need to go. As I said, I am talking to everyone about the bridge project because it is an important project. But we have to look at, it provides heat to families in the winter. It's winter in New Hampshire. So the alternative is oil or propane. And so what I want to do is make the best decision to make sure that our families do have heat, that we're making the best decision on the carbon footprint. But my commitment, and I hope you hear this, is my commitment is to move forward with renewable energy. And I am one of the senators who has pushed that forward from the beginning. Thank you.
Okay, Steve, you want to, okay, so we'll go another round.
Yes, thank you. As part of the plan I put out earlier this week, and the implication seems to be that perhaps I've not spent as much time, I've been quick to the decision. Folks that have known me for a long time, I am very deliberative. I love looking at the data, and I want to get to a place where once I make a decision, I can try to forcefully defend that position. One of my metrics for doing it is, could I do a 90-minute town hall on a specific subject and be able to handle it? And so we've done that, for example, on gun violence. Spent a lot of time, and I take pride in really trying to do that homework. I would say that as part of the plan that I put out, we often think in Planet Concord terms of 2-year increments because that's the term of everybody. And that means that it's hard to do generational change. But if we're going to do things like really lower rates by 15 to 20%, get off of 64% natural gas, dramatically, get off of 0.5% of our coming from solar, we need to do things that are generational, and that's why when I think of this entire campaign, it makes it a little harder in the short term because you're asking folks to go bigger than the next 2 years. But I'm not trying to get the title. I'm trying to get the job. And the job is to do big things really well that make this an amazing state to be.
Okay, Molly, if you want to.
Oh, that's fine. We'll go to the next question.
Okay, all right. All right, I'm going to take 4 more questions.
Oh, boy.
Sean? All right, let's see, Mary Beth? Okay, in the back, the gentleman with the beard with the hand up. Ben? And what's your name?
Zoe.
Zoe? Okay, Sean.
Hi, so my question is actually about healthcare. At the national level, we talk a lot about Medicare for all and healthcare as a right. And I know that from some recent economic experiments in other states, maybe that doesn't work necessarily for New Hampshire alone. What can you do to expand healthcare coverage here in New Hampshire beyond what we're doing already? And do you believe that healthcare is a right?
Okay, so Molly?
Yes, I do believe it is a right. I think we all deserve to have health care, all of us, everyone. And I would support universal health care. I know that that's much more of a federal issue, or how they would implement universal health care federally. But I think that we can work together and close with our federal delegation, who you know have endorsed my campaign, Senator Shaheen and Senator Maggie Hassan, U.S. Congresswoman Annie Custer, because they want to work with me, and they also know I'm an effective leader and will get things done. I have supported the Affordable Care Act. I'm disappointed that it has been what we might call watered down, especially now we're being challenged with pre-existing conditions. I was with some young people who were in recovery and were really, really upset that they might not be able to move forward in recovery from one of our biggest epidemics, our epidemic, the opiate epidemic here, because they were concerned about not having health care. I had supported Medicaid expansion when I was in the Senate, and as governor, I would make it permanent, because we do all deserve to have health care. I think, we need to work together. It's difficult on a state level to implement a universal health care, but I would be open to working with others regionally in other states to start those discussions to see what we can do. In the meantime, I will strengthen the affordable health care and continue to make Medicaid expansion permanent. Thank you.
If there's something that's not new to me, it's healthcare. I grew up in an immigrant household, I alluded to that, in the west side of Manchester. And in 1990, my dad, who's a carpenter, lost the work. He couldn't sell a house he built. We had 2 mortgages and no income while the recession was knocking us down. So we cut our insurance. And then my mom was 39 years old, and she had a heart attack. $80,000 medical bill from Catholic Medical Center. And they kept calling us and they said, if you're not a deadbeat, you'll pay your bill. As if we were holding on to the money by not paying for insurance so that we could pay for the bill after it. There's this implication that we game the system when we're lazy, that people are doing something wrong because they have a heart attack at 39, or because my dad can't sell a house that he built and then the economy tanked, or that I was trying to be the first kid to graduate high school and go to college. We all felt like we did something wrong. Well, this just in. We didn't do anything wrong. The system was wrong. The system is wrong. And if you want to know how hard I'm going to work to do everything I can at the state level and to lobby the heck out of anybody that's got influence at the national level to make sure that nobody feels the way that Norman and Suzanne Marchand felt, and my family felt in 1990. You're looking at them. It is a right. It is part of a living wage. It is part of dignity. It is part of a $15 minimum wage. It should say that if you work 40 hours a week, you should be able to have a roof over your head, and food in your stomach, and transportation to get where you need to go, and health care where you don't have to worry about snapping an ankle and going under. 63% of Americans cannot pay a $1,000 emergency medical bill. That is garbage. It is absolute garbage. Chris Sununu said last year that we should get rid of the mandate to buy it because people with health insurance want the freedom to not have to buy it. Did you know that was the problem with health insurance? You want the freedom to not have to have it. He's the son of a governor and the brother of a senator. I'm the son of Norman Sue Marchand. Unlike him, I have experienced the freedom of not having health insurance. Give me a chance to get on that stage a couple days before the election and to tell him that to his face, and let's see what the voters in New Hampshire think about that.
All right, Mary Beth, speak up, please.
Hi, former high school teacher, no problem with speaking up.
All right.
Your platforms are very similar, so I'm going to ask each of you what differentiates you from your opponent, and what is your greatest strength and your greatest weakness?
Okay, so Steve, you go first.
In an effort to keep this at 2 minutes, my greatest weakness may be my ability to answer questions in less than 2 minutes. My wife would say other things, but, you know. My greatest strength, I think, is a comfort level to be able to get to a place, in this context of public policy, to figure out what I think the right answer is, irrespective of what my assumptions might have been at the beginning of the process. And once I get to that place, I am unafraid to lead on it. I am very comfortable. A lot of this probably comes from growing up in a household where I saw my dad do that as an immigrant who, if you don't go to work, if you miss a couple days of work because you hurt your knee or something, you don't get paid as a carpenter. There's an attitude of a work ethic and an attitude that you got to get to the end zone. And as a local elected official, it's a very results-oriented business. And you develop a little bit of a fearlessness because no matter what decision you make, somebody's going to smack you. So you might as well do what you think is right and go for it. And that has been my attitude for years. You try to work across party lines where you can, but if you find you cannot, then you need to build a durable coalition that allows you to do it within, in this context, the Democratic Party. In terms of the difference, I think it's clear that in terms of the specificity of answers, the preparedness to be able to take a desired solution, to be unafraid to be specific and bold about what we think the answer is to the biggest problems we face, and then have a highly analytical nature that's quantitative to get to that place. It actually is one of the ways, after doing 260 meet and greets and thousands of conversations, I have learned a tremendous amount along the way. You teach a little, you learn a lot more. And it turns out that people that voted for Romney and then Clinton, people that voted for Bernie and then Trump, people that voted for Bernie and then stayed home, whatever, they are looking for specificity. They want you to be thoughtful. They want you to just lay it out and then let it rip. And if you do that, we can build this durable coalition that I believe can not just win the election, which we will, but do it with a majority in the House, Senate, and Executive Council to provide a roadmap for where we can go and to build the capital. You earn capital when you do it that way that I intend to spend as a governor.
You know, we talk about our own strengths, which is always harder to talk about, right? But what I really feel that is personal to me, and that what I have really shown in my entire life is that I am able, have, and continue to bring people together to collaborate and to solve problems. It is time that we listen to each other, that we think together, and that we treat each other with dignity and respect along the way. That's what's important, and I know that's who I am and where my core values are and have always been. You know, children and families have been my priority, and they will continue to be my priority. We talk about issues today, and we have talked about them tonight, and they're all very important. But when I hear that there are 44, and read and see that there are 44,000 children in New Hampshire that are food insecure, I can't sleep. When I hear that we receive a report from the CDC that there are children in the state who are suffering from thyroid disease and cancer, and it may be because, and showing evidence about our environment and some of the industries that need to be cleaned, I can't sleep. When I hear that there are children at DCYF that are not taken care of, I keep my husband up at night because I can't sleep. These are the issues that are most important to me, and I hold them close to my heart. What we need to do when we move forward in this election is to keep our eye on what's most important at the end of the primary. And that is that we must defeat and unseat Chris Sununu, because he is taking our state in the wrong direction. As Larry said, the most important thing that we do is that at the end of this primary, we come together and we work together to be able to do that and to unseat and defeat Chris Sununu. That's what's important, and I will continue to work on that every day. Thank you.
All right, Ben?
Good evening. My name is Ben Kramer. I'm a senior at UNH. I'm an activist and community organizer with the New Hampshire Youth Movement. I love how much we were talking about education tonight, because after I graduate at the end of this year, I will be facing a mountain of student debt that makes me want to curl up and cry. And that is the case for so many young people across the state. We have, as you all well know, an extremely expensive college system in the state, and we need to change that if we want to support young people in New Hampshire. So my question for you is two parts. First, I'd like a yes or no answer. Do you believe that it is a right for young people to have access to affordable, accessible, and debt-free higher education? If so, what will you do to allocate funds and to change the USNH system to make that happen?
Okay, Molly, you go first.
Well, you said Ben, right? Ben. I hope you heard my opening statements, because I said education was a priority, and I talked about what it was like for me to go back to college as a single mother with 3 small children. So I understand your concerns. I ended up with loans as well. I worked my way through, and we do. And the biggest reason I'm running for governor is to make sure that everyone in the state, everyone has access to education and job training. We do need to make college more affordable, and I think that there are things that we can do about that. First of all, we have to make sure the trustees of the university system who are appointed, and governors do appoint them, that they are aware of the fact that that's a priority and that our young people will not be coming to our state if we do not have affordable college. We need to be working with our business industries, all of them, manufacturing, high tech, and with healthcare, because they're looking for you. They want you to work with them. So they need to be players and to be able to help with paid internships, programs that they can work with to lower your loans. We need to work with the federal delegation to make sure that we can get the interest rate on loans much lower. And that's unconscionable, what is happening today. We need to expand our college debt repayment program, which can include, public service, but we need to expand it beyond that. So yes, you are absolutely right. Everyone in New Hampshire should have the right to be able to do what they want to do. If that's education, if that's trades, if that's job training, skilled training. We must be able to do that and make that affordable. I also think that the programs that we have, that in high school you can start taking college courses, we need to expand those, make sure that students know those are available, because if you could skip a year or a semester of college, that would definitely help as well. Sorry, the stop sign is up. Thank you.
My general philosophy is that if you are to the right of Georgia on public policy, you should probably reevaluate your position. Georgia provides free tuition for students that qualify, I believe at a B level, for in-state. I have a debt-free plan for college, period. And it is affordable because this is not new to me. When I was, and you may have missed the beginning of this, when I was a student in high school growing up in the Manchester area, went to Goffstown High School. That's when my mom had her heart attack. That's when we filed bankruptcy. I was trying to be the first family member, forget about going to college. I was trying to be the first one to graduate high school, English as second language. It is first generation kids, post-secondary kids, that are the most vulnerable to the way we do higher ed right now. So it is not enough to say we're going to try to freeze tuition, because in my case, they had good news and bad news for me. The good news is I got the big envelope from UNH. They told me that was good. And then I opened it, and they said it was going to be $13,000 a year, which now sounds like a deal, but at the time was the highest in-state tuition in America. We've had that streak a long time. And for me, $13,000 might as well have been $13 million. My problem was $12,000 ago at that time. So we have to think like that. And once you have been in those shoes, my parents felt the sadness they felt because they felt like they could not get it done for their kid who was doing the right thing. That is not cool. We can do better than that. I know we can do better than that. And here's the thing. I ended up getting into Syracuse University, and they said we can do it for $4,000 a year. So let's go Orange. I went to Syracuse for undergrad. I went there for grad school, got a few alums there, and I came back. But a lot of my friends under similar circumstances, they did not. We have to do a better job at keeping a higher percentage of the kids we have here. The plan can work for community college, it's much cheaper. It can work for four-year college, the details are on the website. We can do things with the building trades. It is probably the greatest deficit between the supply and demand of talent is actually in the trades. It got my dad with an 8th grade education into the middle class as a carpenter. He's still working at 73. We need people with that kind of work ethic. They want to get it on. We can do it, but it's going to take debt-free college to get there.
Okay, this is the last question of the evening. Zoe?
Thank you. My name's Zoe, and I wanted to know, without attacking each other, what are your greatest differences in your positions?
Okay, Steve, you go first.
There are several, in no particular order. Probably the greatest one, though, I'm thinking out loud here. It may be the way that we look at where we are in history on public policy as a state. I mentioned in the introductory remarks that for much of the last 50 years, we have been coloring within the narrowest of lines that Mel Thompson and Bill Loeb and folks in the 70s put together that have caused New Hampshire to have arguably the most antiquated system of delivering education, infrastructure, and social services of any state in America. It's the reason we have the second highest administrative cost per pupil. It's the reason why we lose lawsuits for things like mental health. It's the reason we're going to lose a lawsuit probably in the next 2 years on the incredible discrepancy between ed funding of places like Claremont and Franklin and Berlin and places like Portsmouth and Bedford and Windham. It is worse than it was 25 years ago. If we do not begin to change the culture, it took way more than 2 years to get into this mess. And it's going to take way more than 2 years to get out of it. But it is time to begin. And that colors everything I see in public policy. I tell folks this, and it's kind of a joke, but I understand it. The only way, given how difficult the next few years are likely to be, the backloading of the revenue, Chris Sununu, the bills he put in, the next budget is going to be nasty. It's going to be a bear, and he knows it. And he did it on purpose to get through this next election. It is going to be difficult. And we need to be prepared that unless we are prepared to govern like a one-term governor, that's the only way to make sure we definitely will be a one-term governor. We're going to have to show an awful lot of chutzpah and courage to get through it. It's a difficult time. The specificity on things like the Hyde Amendment with abortion, the 50% by 2030. These are specific differences, and there are many in that regard. The specificity, a sanctuary state, and the policies that go with that on immigration. The only one for public funding of campaign finance. I think that's a critically important one. If we don't improve the way we fund campaigns and improve the way we fund our government, it will be difficult to do all the other things that I know we all care about.
As I said earlier, I have made a commitment and continue to be positive during this primary. I appreciate your question. I think one of the differences is that my experience, and I think that's important, my experience has been my lifetime of issues that I have continued to work for, not something that I decided to do because I was going to run for governor. These are values that have been important, core values important in my entire life, and I had implemented that in my experience in the Senate as well. I think about the governor sits in the hot seat. The governor makes very difficult and important decisions about the people she serves. She must know who she is, and she must know what her core values are, and she must know that those core values have been with her in her entire life. I have been tested, and I am ready to be that effective leader. I am proud to talk about my record because it is who I am, and I have been consistent with my core values. So together, again, the most important thing we need to do, unseat and defeat Chris Sununu. That's what we have to keep our focus on here today. Women in New Hampshire know my record on women's rights, women's reproductive rights, and standing with Planned Parenthood. They know that. They know I am the champion, and I always will be. When I am governor, I will not allow reproductive rights to go backwards. When I am governor, I promise you that all women will have access to safe and legal abortion. That's who I am. These issues have never changed. These values have never changed for me. Thank you.
All right, so I want to thank all of you for coming out, and I'm convinced after this evening that whoever wins on September 11th, we're going to have a great candidate for governor, and we need to close ranks on September 12th. We have the room the whole evening, so you're welcome to hang around. But for now, we're formally ending the forum. Thank you very much, everyone.